How's everything? I feel the Scorpio energy, and I also feel today that we're going to be more precise. Yesterday, we were looking at the big perspective, and today we're going to be able to go in and pinpoint a few things to give you more of a feeling of what is a star codon and how can we start to tap into it and work with it. So I'm excited for today.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, definitely the Scorpio energy. And what's really interesting is that the star codon of Eve, which we're going to speak about, and some others, but that's actually in this whole process of the geometry, that's actually overlit by gate 71. So it's really interesting, as I say, that it's so auspicious that we're starting this whole process in that pure yang energy of transformation. And of course, we're in the Orpheus 13th zodiac sign as a deacon at the moment. So the serpent bearer, which are revealed in the book, is actually Sophia, the mother of dragons. And so that's all that link to the DNA, to the serpent life force or the dragon life force, the Kundalini energy. And it's really interesting that Eve is in that geometry. And just to explain that when this all came through and this arrangements of the star codons, this is actually this is actually perfect to the DNA code. So a lot of people, when they bring through transmissions, a lot of it is their interpretation. And so, but with me, with the lost octave and with the star codons, this is why I find this stuff absolutely amazing and fascinating, because I didn't make any of this. This is actually how the DNA code is choreographed, how it's constructed. And so when you actually see this, it's so amazing that all of these things fall into place. And so that's why I say that everything that you'll get to learn about this is through the genetics is perfect, through the astrology is perfect. It's not something that I've decided, oh, I can just try and fit these pieces together. This is exactly how it's done scientifically. So you're really getting this sort of biology lesson as well as the mythology lesson, and then all in between the chemistries and the reactions and how this all links to archetypes and the astrology. So that's why it's just this such a beautiful, comprehensive expression to know it all. So we'll go straight in because we got lots to get through and I'm super excited about sharing this. So where we got to yesterday. So the first part of the course is the star codon of independence. And so how it works is that that star codon of independence houses, or it's the star codon that holds 16 other gates. So remember, as Bella reminded us, that each of these spheres that you see are actually gates. And we'll get into the numbers and the gates of what they are today. But essentially that independence is the overlighting part, and all of those gates are part, their base theme is independence. That's why I say that the star codon of Eve is in independence, because it's the sense of first humanity. It's this, in order for anything to be created, it's perceived as separate until we really understand what independence is. And it's more the fact that we can be this sort of the embodiment of the divine, even in that perceived separation. So it goes really, really deep. You can see how it is, but that's what we're going to explore today, the star codon of independence. So just have that in mind when we go through this, that the gates that are involved in that, they're all looking for, and they're all going through a journey as well. So if you think about the gates as like personalities, those gates are searching. They hold the codes, but they're also searching within them to know themselves. So that's the feeling that I got when I was going through this, that the star codon of Eve, she's also trying to find her way in the world. She's trying to figure out what is her purpose in this separate sort of reality, or seemingly separate reality. And of course, this is the journey that we get to move with them. And this is all about biology, right? This is about aliveness. This is a live transmission. It's not something that was, it's something that is, and it lives inside us. And that's what I think is so beautiful, that we get to experience this live with your own DNA is going to react to what you're perceiving and what you're interacting with. So just to put that as a caveat. So I don't know if there's anything you want to say about that, Bella, before we go into Eve.
Just this thing about codon, maybe just explain why are we speaking about the codon of independence, but then inside of the codon of independence, there are also codons. How can a codon be something bigger and something smaller as well?
Yeah, no, beautiful. It's a bit essentially like music. That's why the Lost Octave was so, in a way, easy to translate because when we think in terms of music, and you don't even have to really know music, you can feel music. And essentially, it's this sense that the universe is holographic, right? So we know that there's a macrocosm, there's the greater sphere of it, and then there's that microcosm, and sort of as above, so below, all of those ancient wisdoms that we hold. So star codons really are the fact that they're essentially groupings of gates in alignment with the groupings of the amino acids and the genes and the proteins within the DNA. And so that's really where we're already starting at an advanced point here, because this geometry is actually fourth dimensional. So we're actually already starting this whole process in this understanding of the fourth dimension, which popularized as the sense of time. And this sort of fourth dimensional star codons, these are linked to the astral plane and the emotional body. So the 3D planes, and I'll show you all of this as we go through. The 3D is that form, is the physical nature, and then the next body in our auric field is the emotional body or the astral plane, and that's the fourth dimension. And so that's really we're trying to bridge the gap between the physical realm and the higher realms. And so we go through each of these dimensions like we go through each of the auric layers until we reach that point where we feel that wholeness of the complete aura and all of our bodies. And then that's when we can really accelerate through into the multidimensional self, because it's kind of like you can't bypass, you can't jump through dimensions because they really wouldn't make any sense to you. They just look like complicated geometries. So by doing it like in this way of going through the emotions, right? And that's the sort of the call for the Aquarian age from Pisces, from the water into the air element, is that we need to make sure that we heal, clear, and activate and allow the rivers of our nadis, of those energetic channels, especially through the emotional body. And this is going back all the way through our ancestry as well. We need to clear those in order to get to the next level of the mental plane, and then so on. So yeah, so star codons essentially are, you could say, they're groupings of gates. And so they can be a single gate by itself, which might seem weird, but we'll speak about more. But they can be in pairs, they can be in threes, they can be in eights, they can be in 16s, and they multiply. So it's really important how it all builds together to essentially what we're trying to do is all of these five aspects, we're essentially trying to merge them together. And at the higher planes, they're already all one, right? But from our perspective, we see individual gates and we don't see the correlations. And that's what this journey's about, to see the interconnectedness, that everything resonates with everything else. When you activate one gate, you activate this group of gates, and that activates another whole group of gates. And essentially, that's why I say we're these roots of fractals trying to go back to that one tree, to the source code of all creation. So I hope that answered the question and cleared some things up. So thank you for that. I will start with the star codon of Eve. And with this, there's going to be images that I'll be creating for each and every one of them. And everything's going to be laid out very simply. And these will be things that you'll be able to, like cards in a way, reference cards that will all be given to you that you can look at and go into in your own time. That's all going to be saved on the online platform. So none of this information is going to be hidden for you. Every single thing, the more stones that I unturn, the more information I share with you. And this transmission is it's an ongoing thing. As I said last time, it was only last week that I figured out how to do the ninth dimensional geometry. So even within this course, it's mutating and transforming as we are all activating these gates and going through them. So as I go through it, I see different geometries and different codes are coming in. So that's why I'm excited for everybody to share their experience, because the wealth of knowledge and wisdom and healing and beauty, it's definitely a collective movement through this. So we'll get into the sort of the details of this afterwards, because I just wanted us to receive just a small snippet of the transmission of this first, because it's very easy for us to go, okay, what gate is this, and what zodiac sign is this? And that's like the left brain side of us, right? But what we need to move into, this is a feminine transmission in a way, because it's the maternal DNA. So it's about feeling it, because often the analytics and the structures can get in the way, or our preconceived ideas of what that gate means already. So in this, I just wanted to read this aspect of the transmission, and you'll get a feel for Eve. So this came through as the title of the Mother Vine, and I was expressing this yesterday. And the star codon of Eve is the portal to first mitochondrial Eve over 300,000 years ago in the homelands of Mother Africa. She is the mother vine that rhythmically flows through our very veins, animating all life in wild ecstasy. And I'll just pause there for a minute, because again, the temptation is to go, okay, next thing. But each individual word sentence is constructing a picture, is constructing a feeling. And for me, in this, what stands out today, and it may be different in a different day, but to me, this sense of animating all life, right? And that's the Shakti. That's the purpose of Shakti. If you're into any of the sort of Vedic traditions or that sense of the Kundalini, what does Kundalini do? It's not necessarily about going through your body and having enlightenment. It's actually about the fact that it animates matter. And that's what the feminine does. And in sort of psychology, like Carl Jung's psychology, you've got the anima and the animus. And anima is like animation. And so we watch animation films because it brings it all to life. And so essentially, the mother vine is life, the life that runs through us to animate us to have the experience that we're having. She is the first daughter of Gaia. That is powerful. She dawned the age of humanity upon our earth through her rogue, untamable beauty. She is the unbound anomaly conjunct the architectural perfection of Saturn. To believe the mother vine could be ensnared by temptation is laughable at best, for she is the garden. She is Eden. So just from this, that sense of feeling, this rogue, untamable beauty, well, that's nature. When you try to crush nature, it springs up somewhere else. When we pollute the land and poison our bodies, which is essentially a gathering of land, then that's where the body heals. The body starts to mutate. The DNA starts to shift. We evolve. And so this untamable beauty is the fact that the feminine, no matter how much it tries to be suppressed and repressed, no matter how much it's been chopped out of our history, it springs up. It's something that cannot be defeated. And then there's this beauty that she's conjunct the architectural perfection of Saturn. And if you know anything about Saturn, in all of the histories, it's the sense of architecture. It's the sort of masculinity that is the ladder. In order for the snake or the serpent to climb the ladder, for the vine to weave through the fence. So Saturn is like the fence. And you see this in gardens where there's these beautiful walled gardens and the lawn is perfect and everything's just so. But Mother Nature, she'll break through concrete because it's untamable. There is no way to stop that from happening. And that's the beauty. That's why I say that she's here to upset the balance in order to create balance. And this is this beautiful dance between order and chaos that has been an age-old thing of like what's better, because sometimes we need the chaos, right? And that's kind of the mythical dying before you die or having rebirths so that you can renew yourself. Even skin, when it's sort of burnt, then it heals and then it regrows and our body shifts. And so this is what Eve stands for. It's not a person. It's the living life force. It literally is the Shakti. So everything that you see that's animated, Eve is there. Eve is the one that's driving this force. And the fact that she is the first daughter of Gaia. So how I saw it for me was that Gaia is our mother, right? So she's the ground. She's the one that holds everything. And then the first shoot, the first vine that ever grew on Gaia, that's Eve. And that's why it was really interesting. You can feel how can I say, the defiant passion of Eve, because it was almost her words to say that to believe the mother vine could be ensnared, which is an interesting word, ensnared by temptation, that old biblical narrative. It's like, how can the garden being tempted into this sort of good and evil battle by this apple when she provides everything? She is that garden. She's the tree. She's the apple. She's the serpent. She's the one that eats. She's the one that provides. It's like this is where blows our perspective of this smallness of, okay, this woman that sinned, that ate an apple, and then this knowledge of good and evil happened. And it's like, yeah, but before that, in order for that tree to be there, then that's what Eve is. And so it's she's all of it. It's like saying the subconscious and the conscious, superconscious, and all these separations. That's not the vine. That's trying to categorize things, trying to, in the masculine way, trying to put labels onto things and segment everything into this perfect geometry. But this is why Eve here, although this whole process of the star codons is all about geometry in a way of the DNA and how everything fits, Eve is here to upset all of this balance and to show you and break through everything, break through those barriers of the constructs, and to show you that in order sometimes to move into a higher geometry, that actually you need to break out of the geometry you've been in. And that is the pulse. That is the living pulse that's breathing through this whole transmission. And in a way, that's our default ground of when we go through the course, is that just to remember that whatever's happening at the moment, Eve is weaving through. She's finding different ways, different channels. She's breaking boundaries. Even if you're not aware of it, the fact that you're just receiving this transmission and going through it, you've agreed to go through and you've agreed to evolve on a conscious level. And that's what we need in the world, is conscious participation on a mass level. Even if we can't feel it and it's in a subtle plane, you may just feel that you notice that you don't react in a certain way in your emotions. And you're like, wow, that I didn't even do anything. But you're doing stuff in that subtle way. So I don't know if you want to share anything about that for you, Bella, how that makes you feel. And, obviously from this is my experience, like I said, on a universal level. And then I have my sort of my own personal experience through it.
Yeah, I want to play a little bit because many of you that are here today are in human design or gene keys or astrology. So I want to bring it a little bit to that contemplation, knowing that's just one contemplation, and then also say why this is different and where this is taking us. So if we just think about where we are, some of you know the hexagrams well. So if you know the hexagrams, you're going to see the two lines that are yang, then the yin in the middle and the yang on the bottom. So you know that this is hexagram 61. So if you know the gene keys or human design, just go to the gate. What is gate 61? Where is it in the body graph? Where is it in the astrology? So this is the Capricorn gate. It is cardinal earth. So with what we know here, we might have a completely new way of looking at what is Capricorn. Some of us, we think about Capricorn as something rigid and structure and responsibility. Well, this is a kind of responsibility. It's a responsibility of life. We also know that we are speaking about this kind of life force. And if we think about the body graph, it's actually in the middle of the body graph in that kind of Kundalini and life force. So there is a way of taking what we see here and bring it back to astrology or back to human design. And then what you can see here is a completely new mythology and storytelling that for me is actually empowering in a completely new way than just me going and looking at a gate in the wheel, for example. The other thing, however, when we look at how does the hexagram look, and we see this like the lines on top and bottom, and then you have that little window in the middle. And we know that this gate is about inner truth and inner knowing. And that's also going back to the story. Like when the knowing is the inner knowing, how can you ever be tempted on the outside? When you have that pulse, that knowing, that kundalini, that life force that is nurturing from the bottom, from the cardinal earth of being here, how can you ever be tempted, or how can you ever be manipulated? So this is the sovereign, the first sovereign woman, or the first sovereign energy that is here, and that we all can come back to. And also through that kind of inner knowing, it's also how we can connect to the oneness, to the greater mystery. So this is just a little snippet of how can we go in and connect what we maybe already know from the I Ching or human design. How can we connect it, or astrology, into this storytelling and start to feel it and start to allow it to activate things in us? So that's what I've been playing with a little bit to sometimes just make it a little bit more tangible for me. But when I do that, then when I go through that, like the inner truth, then this can take me so far. But I like to situate myself with what I already know so that I can like put on the seatbelt and go where I don't know. And that's for me what the star codons do. They take me where I haven't been before.
Yeah, beautiful. And I'll just explain in this and then fully reveal all the parts. And so on a technical level, you'll see here obviously Eve. And one of the things that I thought was fascinating is that when you look at the actual DNA code, right, which is all the things that will actually share with you how to read the I Ching as the DNA code. So this may not make a lot of sense to many people, and it may make a lot of sense to people that are really familiar. But isn't this interesting? This is what I was saying about the synchronicities are quite crazy. When you look at this code, AUA, and then you look at Eve's spelling, right? So EVE, and it's like a mirror in a way. It's like there's two E's up here, two A's there. And the U and the V in many ancient languages are interchangeable as well. So even the name and the code are actually like showing you that it's all this same transmission perceived in different ways. And as Bella said, here you can see that this is gate 61. So those of you that have got the lost octave will know that what was so beautiful about this transmission, and the reason why I feel it came through at this time, is because when I increased the lost octave into the chromatic octave, then the first of the chromatic octave was gate 61. And isn't that really interesting that Eve ended up being gate 61? So it merged absolutely perfectly with the lost octave. And this isn't just me saying this. This is because when I reveal here, like Bella said, that the zodiac sign is Capricorn, which is, as she said, about the cardinal earth. And you can see here the element, which is the hexagram element of wind over lake. But this is where the maternal DNA reveals the other half of the story of what's been known so far in terms of the hexagrams and amino acids. Because here, methionine is the amino acid for gate 61. Now, to those that have really studied this, it'll be like, well, that's different. How is that different? And when you understand what methionine does, that is the start codon for the maternal DNA. And that's why it's Eve. So in what's been known so far in the hexagrams and the DNA, there's only one start codon, right? Gate 41, that's the only start codon in the nuclear DNA. Now this feminine transmission of the maternal DNA is now saying that, hold on a minute, there's actually another start codon, a feminine start codon in gate 61. That is where it started to blow my mind, that what we've seen is only half of the story. And this is why I say that all of a sudden, right there after the winter solstice in December, when the Christ is born, all of a sudden there's Eve, when the sun starts to rise again, when the resurrection happens there at Christmas. It's right there in the genetic code. and it's the feminine that is being burst through. So gate 61 happens before gate 41. So where we thought that the genetic code started in gate 41, Aquarius, it actually starts before that. And this is a much older aspect of our DNA. Remember that this can be traced back to first humanity, 200, 300,000 years ago. So this is why I say that we've seen half the story of these two strands when the maternal DNA is doing something else. And so when we can see them together, that's what I call in the star codons the mother father tantra, because it's those two weaving together. They start differently. There's different amino acids that they're connected to. And this is where the fascination of the journey goes. And that's why I say it's the expansion, the extension, and the evolution of all of this work, because the maternal DNA's never been looked at before. So you can see here that it's ruled by Saturn. So Capricorn ruled by Saturn. And then, of course, you can see the Capricorn sign. So you get all of the signs, you learn the symbols, you learn the hexagrams, the DNA code. And then it goes even deeper on this technical sort of level of insight. And this is why we do one star codon every week, because they are so deep. The transmission that I read you, that's only part of it. This part really goes into it, because here we see that we have the star law. And what was really interesting to me better about this was that this coincides with the star law of Delphinus, which is the dolphin. Well, that's really interesting that Eve is connected to the dolphin frequency through the astrology and the DNA, and it's the star codon. And so many people have that connection to the waters, to the sense of the whales and the dolphins. And I remember writing once about that the dolphins long to be human. And it's like they almost look to us like, wow, I can't wait in a way to reincarnate as a human and experience what you do. And dolphins are fascinating in terms of they're in that maternal space for a lot longer. I think it's 12 months they're in that maternal space for, compared to our 9 months. And that's why their brains are more evolved and have more of this higher intellectual intelligence. And so these are things that we get to explore. And of course, all of these star codons, they're linked to the subtle bodies. Like I said, although that we're looking at this as the fourth dimension and the astral plane, on another level, this is actually linked to what is known as the Buddhic body. And so this is quite deeply esoteric. And for those of you that know it, that you'll know it, but this is about the bodies of these different planes rather than just the planes, because this whole transmission is about you here and now. It's about your auric layers, your auric fields. And you construct these different layers, these Buddhic body fields around you, these morphogenic fields that start to increase your antenna to be able to connect to wider consciousness, be able to connect to and have different relationships with other things. And so this is already telling us that this has a profound connection to the dolphin realm, to the dolphin frequency, to sound. And that's very much part of the star codons. And then as we go through, you'll see that each one has a chemical component. And chemiluminescence is this absolute amazing word that I found in the DNA. And essentially, it's the fact that it's the illumination of the chemical formulas, the alchemy, right, that happens in the DNA of this code. And with this, I was able to find out and work into this. Like, how does this correspond to our feelings? How does this correspond to the secretions in the brain, to our moods? Because I want this to be something of a feeling transmission rather than just analytical. And so this is connected to endorphins, right? The relief of endorphins, right? And so they're kind of like feel good expressions. But mostly for endorphins, it's that sense of relief. It's like there are lots of different chemicals that are released when there's human interactions. Chemicals are released when humans touch. And these brain chemicals, they really, really change how we express ourselves in the world. And so this is linked to that sense of the endorphins. And you can see here that from the Lost Octave, we have the quadrinity psychology, that this is a transformation channel. So actually 4 channels, which we may get into, but this already shows you that the whole essence of Eve is about the ever changing, the book of changes. That's why I say it's almost like she's so perfectly the I Ching. She's almost like the one that drives that I Ching to keep evolving. And so she's the transformation channel, and it's linked to our sense of endorphins. And so this is the kind of how we explore each of these individually as we go through. And Eve is unique in a way because she stands as like a sovereign, independent, the star code of independence, right? She stands as this sort of independent star codon. Now, what's beautiful in this, and I'll share this because I think it's really important, is well, who was Eve with? Do you remember who Eve was with, Bella?
Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve, right? So who do you think is Adam in the star codons?
I happen to know that. Should I reveal it?
Yeah, why not?
So the 41, which we know as the star, if we are into the I Ching.
Exactly. Now, isn't that really interesting that what we've known up to this point is that gate 41 stood as a sovereign gate, right? Of the start codon in the nuclear DNA. And now through this, I found the start codon of the feminine in the maternal DNA. But what's so beautiful is they are actually linked. So now you can start to see that gate 41 and gate 61 are actually lovers. And that's in our DNA code. And that's why I say that so far we've only known half of the story. We've only seen Adam in a sense, right? And so that's really where, when we see both working together, and it's like, wow, all of a sudden, Adam and Eve are the two start codons in our DNA, and they are working together, the mother father tantra. And so, this is how the star codons have their sense of sovereignty, some of them, and most of them are like pairs and groups. And this is where it starts to round the picture as to this is all this amazing dance. This is everything is connected and so perfectly. And yeah, it's for people that really know this work, and especially in human design and things like that, it's to see that these two are both start codons and they're actually paired. They're actually chemically linked. For me, this is how the whole star codons got birthed. And this was the first gate that I found through the maternal DNA. And that I knew straight away, I was like, this is Eve, that is Adam. And then that's the beautiful divine union that we get to start with the entire star codons. So I don't know if you want to share anything about that, how you feel with that, or any insights.
I feel that this was the place to start as we're doing this with everyone because this is the creation story. And it's the side of the creation story that we didn't have before. Sometimes when I was a child and they would tell me that Eve was made out of the rib, right? It just seemed like a weird way to start. Like, why? And here I see a love story where there are two sovereign beings that are coming together and a new kind of marriage and possibility. So starting this journey with the star codons and with Adam and Eve in a completely new light and in a completely new way of coming through us. That for me feels exciting and it also feels alive and true.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. So yeah, what a great way to start. So I'll move into speaking a little bit about how they're grouped, and then we'll go into the star codon of independence. And again, write in the chat if you have any questions about this and how you're feeling about it. It's so great to see. So this is like interesting in itself, this 3D grouping, right? Because often we actually draw a lot in 2D. And so, in a way, that narrows our bandwidth in terms of how things are possible. Because even when you look at a cube like this, it's interesting when you focus on it, which part is the front bit and which part is the back bit. And this is where this sense of perspective, right? This was the Renaissance movement in art where they started to use perspective in their drawings. It wasn't anymore just a flat plane. And that's how we need to start to feel about the hexagrams, about the I Ching, about our geometry, because our physical form isn't a flat piece of paper. And so that's why it's so important to see how dimensions work. And this is a very typical sense of a 3D geometry of the cube. And you can see already that, well, that's interesting that we have 8 gates here. So in the third dimension, like the octaves, that there's already groupings of 8. And so this is where we start to see that one individual gate that you have is actually part of an even greater whole. It's part of an octave already in the 3D, and that's not even been explored yet. So let alone the fact that when we move into the fourth dimension, which is this geometry, which is a cube inside a cube, right? In its most simplest form. So all of a sudden, we double an octave as we go into another dimension. So we had 8 gates, and now we have 16 gates. And that's where you see the 4 different colors of the star codons that I showed you about: independence and resurgence and convergence and providence. And so that's why I say you have the physical plane, the 3D, and then we move into the emotional plane, the astral plane of the 4D, because it's the sense of that there's something inside something, right? And it's like our divinity inside our shell. But the amazing thing about the fourth dimension, which is connected to the sense of time, is the fact that what is inner becomes outer. So in the fourth dimension, geometry moves. Right? So it's like a pulse. So it goes, the smaller cube becomes the larger cube, and the larger cube becomes the smaller cube. So they're forever replacing. And that's why I say, imagine like Adam and Eve is like this in your body, in your genome. And that's the movement of creation, right? That's the dance of the two codons coming together. And they're both starting different facets of the DNA code. And then we move into the next plane. And I'm just showing you the planes to give you an idea of how this starts to emerge. And you start to see this sense of complexity, right? And that's why I say we need to do the work in the third and the fourth, so that when you look at this picture in the fifth, you can read this like you could read a book. That's what we're getting to over this year, is that you can look at these things and you understand them, and you can perceive the different cubes and depths and the different geometries and gates and the different astrology and how it all merges together. And then you'll see as we go through is that when we move into the sixth dimension, it's like, whoa, like overload, no idea what that is. It like looks super complicated. At the same time, it looks like amazing, right? It looks so fun. Like imagine being able to look at that and know exactly how to read that. And that is a reflection of what's going on inside your body. So think about the processes that you'll be doing about knowing yourself. If you can understand that geometry and the DNA code and the hexagrams and the astrology, imagine how you're going to be able to understand all of the parts that make up yourself and your life. And this is why I say that when we move into hyperdimensional humanity, the new human, these are like the codes, the blueprints that we anchor, so then we can start to see reality. We can separate our, the triggers from our reactions. We can start to take control over and notice our emotions and notice our thoughts. And we can start to alchemize this because we know that everything's connected. There's no sense to despair in any of this as we tackle some quite difficult subjects as we go through the star codons. Like I said, the maternal DNA, she's not shy. She's like, it's like that facet of Kali Mars in there to say, okay, let's face the worst things. And so when you know these geometries and you know all of the star codons, you can move through this with amazing confidence. And even for me, because Bella knows I love to geek out on all this stuff. So I drew all of these, right? So all of these I actually drew because for me in meditation, I love to do like open eye meditations where I draw, because I go into this rhythm of this. And I start to see how it all fits and lays together. And that's why I say it's absolutely impossible to say that anything is independent, essentially. And that's like the irony of the first gate, because we have that sense of sovereignty and independence, but then you realize that everything that you do affects the whole. It's how all of the dimensions are. And that's why it's so important that when you do this work for yourself, it will ripple out into the people that are closest to you. It will ripple out into your work colleagues. It will ripple out into the collective. So that's why I say, even on a subtle level, you may not perceive things are changing. But if we, as we do this all together, we are making this wave. We are pioneering this work. As I say, we are literally at the forefront of saying, let's go through this 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness, because we don't even really know where this is going to go. We know that there's a promised land at the end, but how we get there is going to be the fun to all of this. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Bella, before we go into the next part.
No, I actually want to kind of another pause so that it can sink in, because what you just said is not a small thing. It's actually quite a magical thing.
Yeah, I think one of the things I wrote in the Star Codons was the more multidimensional that we become, the more whole that we will feel. And you can see here that we start with 8 gates. And then you look at the sixth dimension and you're like, wow, that's the same as the hexagrams, right? So you imagine there was 8 hexagrams there, and then you see how many hexagrams are all interlinked there. And that's why I say that when you start to realize you are the whole of astrology, the whole of that DNA is within you. And so we are looking at the entire system. And that's why it takes us a year, right, to go through that. And even that's a quantum speed, because this, as I say, this could have been easily a 2-year course, even 3-year course to go through this. But I felt it has a speed to this. It has time to go into it, but it's like there is an agenda here. Eve is mutating, it's evolving. And as we know, times in this world are moving at these quantum leaps. And so we need to step up and step forward and really start to go through this and do that work and enjoy what's going to be explored every single week. So this is a great example and we'll go through this piece by piece, because I know as soon as I put these things up, that's why I blanked some of it off, because I thought as soon as I put this up, I know pens will be scribbling and people are thinking, oh, what these gates, and how is that connected? And where's that in the graph? And okay, so before we go into that, let's just have a look. The fact that these gates are grouped in the third dimension. So there are 3D codons and 4D codons and 5D codons and etc. And so within then there's multiple codons. So we'll get into how many codons there are, but there are a lot. And so you can see here that in this 8 gates, that these are actually all connected, right? And so that's why I say that gate 1, this pure yang, is directly connected to these other gates. So it directly has an influence on these. So you could say that in a way that the pure yang, the pure creative, is its shortest connections are these. And so that again makes you start to think. And when you start to see that gate 64 is in the same geometry as gate 1, how perfectly poetic is that? And as I say, this is not something that I constructed and made up. This is how the DNA code choreographs together. And that's what I think is absolutely amazing, that they literally have the alpha and omega in the first part of this, in the first groupings are connected. So, for example, this is the star codon of excellence. Okay. And each one of these, again, has its own transmission, its own chemical connections, all of the DNA codes, and we go through all of that. So, in the 3D, there's those 8 gates. But if you remember rightly, we doubled the octave, right? So, we doubled the amount. There was a cube inside a cube. So, in order to get to the 4th dimension, there's another cube of another set of 8 gates. And this is where we have the third dimensional star codon of wonderment. And then you'll see there that you've got Adam and Eve secretly in there, right? So, and you can see that they're linked, right? So they're linked, but they're also linked to that group. And then that group is linked to that group. So already in the third dimension, you can see that there's groupings here that have never been discovered before, because through the maternal DNA, it starts to bring things together. And that's what's so amazing about this. And I've highlighted here the gate 5718 because we're actually going to reveal that one today as well to really show you that these are working in these lovers, in these pairs, these mother father tantra. So this is how you can see the fourth dimension, the these star codons. So this is the star codon of independence, right? So these two 3Ds combine together and they weave, and then that's when we end up with the star codon of independence. And that's why I say you can see that gate 61 and gate 41 are there. So that's how they connect. And so I wanted to highlight another one of these to share because I think it's so important that you get a grasp as to what these gates are and how they feel. So in here, we've highlighted the 5718. I think this is one of Bella. You really like this one, don't you?
I do.
So this is how we lay out this transmission, right? And we take it through piece by piece. So, as I say, although it may seem overwhelming and there's a lot to look at and lots of gates there, actually, we take each one and we look at them and we go through them. And so here you can start to see that the 18, the 57, we can see the hexagrams, we can see how they're made up in their bigrams, and underneath them is the DNA code for those that don't know. So the CGCs and the GCAs. And so we explain all of that. And so that's why I say that you'll be able to read the hexagrams and the astrology like you're reading a book. And that's what's been amazing for me is that now, like I look at the DNA and I see star constellations. Like the fact that that has happened over this process, to me, it's so beautiful that it doesn't matter whether I look up at the stars or look down into a microscope, like I'm seeing the same thing. And then I'm feeling almost in two different ways, right? One's connected to the earth, one's connected to the physical makeup of how life form comes into being, into animation process. And then one's that celestial view, right? Of seeing from the stars down to earth. And then all in between is all of those layers, like the emotional layer, the mental layer, those different bodies, the different auric fields. And that's what we get to play with. So it really is this sense of we get to see the heaven and the earth. And then the bit in between is our journey, right? We get to play in those realms. And so this is connected to Libra, right? So the star codon of sovereignty here. And this was really interesting because when you look at these two gates independently, you may not have seen that they together would be this sense of sovereignty. Right? And that goes so well with independence. And so that's why I highlighted it because it's like, well, that's interesting that in Libra, we get this recalibration of what is it to be sovereign. So at that autumn equinox point, as we just pass it, we start to move into like, am I going to be stepping into my sovereignty? Am I going to move into the darker months with the subconscious kind of taking over, or am I stepping into my divinity at that point? And that's that sort of balance, right, of the scales in Libra. So this is how the star codons are unfolded. This is how they're revealed. And so I'll go through the other star codons in this so you can start to get a really complete picture of this. And at the bottom here, these are all the star codons that are involved in the star codon of independence. And so there are 10 star codons in here, and some of them vary. Some of them have 8, some have 9, some and 10, but we use 10 weeks to go through each of these major groupings of the 16 gates. And here we see Eve and Adam. And it's interesting that it's done in that way because, as I say, in the wheel, Eve is before Adam, which actually answers the question as to was Eve pulled from Adam's rib? Right? And I really go into this because the DNA code actually reveals the truth about that story of who came first and was man created from woman or woman created from man. And the DNA code actually tells you the exact story, which I think is amazing. And so we have some really interesting and amazing ones here, remembering that the theme is independence, right? So the star codon of Eros, the star codon of Tantra. So there's a lot about the lovers, right? There's a lot about sexual union because essentially that is what life is, right? And so often that's a lot that's cancelled out of our sort of archetypal understandings of things. Often it's tried to be quite clear cut. And that's why I say the mother line, she's about life. It's about procreation. It's about the fact of enjoying the fact that we get to connect on that level using the conscious ways of tantra to embrace our eros and to understand what that even means on this deeper level. So we move into that amid the star codon of sovereignty that we have here. And then it's really interesting. It gets really funky at this point because then we're called into, I think it's another one of your favorites, Bella, is the star codon of morality, because it's like, yeah, we can indulge and we can make love and we can enjoy life and there's all these things. And then this moral compass is also woven into these groupings. And that's obviously, as we know, right? That's part of the Adam and Eve story as well, is this sense of the good and evil. And like we have to make our own sort of find our way into this. And so I know, Bella, you've used this a bit as like a great way is like a barometer, like a leveler of like, is this the morality? Is this connected to that star code? And it's a great way to start to feel and look at life in the through these lenses. And of course, being gate one, being here, we have that pure yang energy, which is Kundalini, right? And so I say it's the pure Shakti here. And that's what leads us into these other ones, which are, they're kind of like those mystical ones in here, like the star codon of the ineffable, right? So the ineffable is like, it's like non-describable. It's sort of like, it's like the essence of life that you can only experience. It's very hard to write. And I remember when I was trying to write about it, how am I going to write about the ineffable? Because anything I say in a way detracts from it, but it's more that the transmission leads you to experience it. So it's like opening the door and saying, follow me. And then once you arrive, then that's where you just get to experience it and feel it. And again, the same with the void. It's like, how can you write about the void? And again, the transmission's not about trying to tell you what to think or feel. It's giving you the pathway, the sort of genetic pathway, astrological pathway to experience what the void actually is. And it's a very different, being maternal DNA, it's a very different look as to this sense of it's just a nothingness. It's much more feminine, much more beautiful than that. And it's so amazing to do. And then you have this sense of the becoming of who are you becoming through this? Right? And that's where the star codon of independence, that's what it's all about. So this is how all of this fits together. And as you can tell, when we go through each of these gates with all the psychology, the astrology, how the DNA works, the transmission, like there is so much here. And that's why I say, like every single week, we're just going to take, say, the star codon of sovereignty. We would look at that, go into that transmission, and then start to play in that realm. And then we have the whole week to see how that works in our life. And so, yeah, this is really how it works. I don't know if you want to share your views on this, Bella, and how you feel about it.
Yeah, I love it. And today we're coming to the nitty-gritty of it that I was so excited for all of you to see. If you remember from yesterday, we looked at the overview and we saw that there were those four colors or four worlds or four processes. So we are looking today at the pink one. That's what you see in the middle, right? And it's so beautiful here too. You get to see it in 3D and in 4D. And also the first question that Robert was answering, what's a codon? So you see these different groupings and we're calling them star codons, all of them. What we are going to dive into is what you're seeing on the bottom, which is the 10 star codons. So in each one of these worlds or processes, this one is the pink one, there's going to be around 10 star codons that are the pairs. And the pairs are like lovers. And especially in this one, you can actually see from the words that they are very much like lovers, like the Eros and the Tantra, right? The Kundalini, the becoming. So here we can also start to seal into a theme that in this case is the theme of independence. But what does that mean? That's the discovery, that's the exploration that we will go into. Now we are looking at the skeleton or the scaffolding of what is it that we're going to do. Thanks to these star codons within each one of the colors, we are going to be able to unfold and unpack and unlock everything that's there. The other thing that you're going to be able to see, for those of you that know the wheel, you're going to see that in the pairs, they are not far away from each other in the wheel. So they're somewhere on that spiral where they are feeding into the same. So they might be in the same sign, like here in Libra, or they might be on the cusp between two signs. Even in just the normal way of seeing it, they are quite close, and I can understand why they have something to do with each other. So we get a little bit of help when we start to explore what we already know in astrology and I Ching and human design. But then this takes us to places we haven't been before. And even just looking at those 10 words, Eve, Adam, Eros, Tantra, sovereignty, morality, Kundalini, ineffable, void, and becoming. Even there, I feel like I have a story of the stars that's like starting to activate in me.
No, absolutely. And that's why I say, like, what is the star codon of independence, right? As the whole, the overlighting. It's made up of these components. And that's why I say it's more of a case of that we formulate the idea of what does independence mean? Because maybe it reshapes your understanding of what independence means for you or other people because we go through this. And that's why I say your outlook in how you move through your life, it will change because it can't not, because you start to realize how many factors compile and merge together to create this sort of harmony within this. And that's why I say that imagine when we move into the next dimension, right? There's even more gates that merge. And that's why I say have to take it by dimension. So you feel happy, you feel comfortable, you've gone through each door, you have a feel for it, you can go back through those channels. It's almost like once you've opened the door, you can always go back and find it again. And so all of these different pathways within you, within your own consciousness, you'll be able to, okay, that room, I remember what that room smelt like, felt like, what did I experience? And so that's why I say that in order for us to have the capacity to even integrate this as we go, we need to take it stage by stage, by the pairs and by groupings, by dimensions. And so there's this beautiful pace through the course, but there's plenty of time, like I said, every single week to embody each codon as we go. And then every single week there's this sort of excitement, I think, of like opening the next package, right? The next present to say, okay, now this is the next one. And so it's got this sort of forever exploration of excitement as we go through. So I think at this point, it'd be great to take some questions because I'm sure there's going to be quite a few as we've been and gone through a lot. But as Bella said, we're really getting into the heart of it now and starting to see how this has all emerged. And yeah, for me, that's why I'm so excited to share it with you because seeing all of this, it's just a whole new playground, right? It's like Bella said, it's a whole new story to start to weave together. And along with the star law, the archetypes and all of these things and the chemical connections, it's just absolutely profound.
I have a question from Nicole. Is it a mostly generalized transmission or is it also applicable to the individual? Here I can speak from my own experience and my own heart. For some reason, every time that Rob came in with a new transmission, whether it was the Soul Colors or the Lost Octave book or the Star Codons, I was always in Sweden and I was always on my own in some kind of introvert phase of my life, or maybe with my mom, but mostly in my own little world. I have a lot of individual circuitry in human design. For me, it's a deeply unique and very personal process. It's a mutative process. And I believe that mutation is happening in the individual, in the tribe, and in the collective. And it's all intertwined. I can see how it starts always inside of me. It's a cellular wake up, it's a cellular unlocking. And then when I walk through the world in my tribes and in the collective, I'm showing up in a different way. And it's inspiring things. And sometimes it's provoking things because it's not always easy to change and to upgrade. So for me, we cannot say that it's only on one plane. However, for me, there has been a part of it. And I was saying that to Rob the other day. that I realized that for the first few months, it was very much an inside process. I don't know if it was noticeable on the outside. But then when I came back to the States and I started to be more with people, suddenly the resonances of people and things around me, there's happening so much because I know that I'm holding a different frequency. It's multidimensional, so it's not going to stay on one level. The last thing it is a generalized, interesting theory. I can tell you that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's why obviously tomorrow we're going to actually speak more about the embodiment processes and embodiment practices. And that in itself, I mean, that could be a whole year's course by itself, right? Because going through all of this, like it's biological, right? It has to make sense in this physical form. That's why I say, although we speak about multiple dimensions, like everything about this transmission, everything about the feminine is about your body, you now, right? So there may seem at times like sort of the sort of luminous concepts, of the nebulous concepts of all of this. But that's only because we haven't walked through it yet. So as you walk through it, you can't know it until you go through it. And then the embodiment practices are there to support that moving through. And so that's why it can feel quite removed, perhaps at the moment, of like, oh, there's all this stuff. How does it even connect to me? But that's the whole point of doing a year of like going through it every single week. And then you'll see how much the embodiment practices support the upgrades, the change, the mutations, right? And so that's the whole point of those, and we'll get into those tomorrow.
We're starting on the 20th in 2 weeks from now. It's going to be a little bit late for Europe. So Central European time is at 10 p.m. on Wednesdays. And for the UK, it's at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. For the West Coast, it's at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And for Pacific, is 1 p.m. And it's going to be once a week. And you probably want to allocate at least 2 hours. And there is the possibility to have the questions and to interact. And at the same time, everything is recorded so that you can also catch up on it. We are going to have a Facebook group with some support. Depending on how many people we're going to have, we are going to decide the kind of breakout rooms where you can interact. It really depends the size of the group. Because if it's not a big group, we're going to be able to journey a little bit more with you. I think we're going to may take a break at least over Christmas for at least 1 week. So the schedule is set to start on the 20th. Even if you feel like you can't be with us for the first weeks, it still makes sense to jump in because we don't know how long we're going to keep it open and we don't know if we're ever going to do it again. In 1 year, this is the third transmission that has come through for Rob. And he seems to be like me, like, why are we going to do the same thing again? So even if you have like, oh, Wednesdays, you cannot always make it, I would still like feel into, get your sacral response, get whatever is authority you have to feel like, is this for me? And find a way to come in if it feels right.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so we've got plenty of time, right? So even if you don't make that Wednesday, you'll have the recording on the online platform that you can go into, listen, and of course, then you've got the rest of the week. So it's not going to accelerate so fast past you because it's just one per week that we do. And so, yeah, plenty of time to catch up and to then respond. But I said, bring your questions to the next session or in the support group, whatever you need.
Yeah, this is a good question. Will there be a book about the star codons or just a course?
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, yeah. I mean, it took me 9 months, right? Every single day, 9 months to write the Lost Octave. And so this is the same size, if not bigger, right? Because the Lost Octave was about the octave gates, which obviously was like the master gates of the whole. But this really is going into every single gate, every single fractal, right? So if the Lost Octave book was big, this would be bigger. So I don't have any plans to be doing a book anytime soon. Hence why it's about this one. Like I said, I wasn't expecting this to happen. There's nothing about, oh, I can see the next evolution of this. Like I was hoping for a rest, like I said. And so Lionsgate, when it happened, was like, this needs to be something that happens as we're going through it live now. And that's what I feel like it's like the genetic code is somehow spurring us to do this in sync with what's happening on the earth. And this, I think that the speed in which we're evolving and expanding, I think that's why it's here to help support that and to start to move people through into the Aquarian age, right? And that's the whole point of moving into the sixth root race of consciousness, of understanding the Aquarian age. So that's why I say that we're right on the front line. We've got the front row seats to a never before seen transmission, never before seen geometries that's going to take us way into the potential new human. And we're getting this point. So it's really a future technology being sent as an invitation to say, if you really want to go and really explore this, if you really want a journey and see what it's all about, like there is no better ticket other than to be on this one. And I hope that you can feel that through everything that we've shared.
And two little things. I remember, Rob, when you presented this to me, you were like, this can maybe be an introduction to the Lost Octave book course. And you said, I think we need 4 webinars. And I remember, I said, Rob, 4 webinars. This is a whole universe. That's the time when I told you, this is a whole new universe. I could feel the anticipation already. And then it just continued and grow and grow and grow to this. And I do believe that to do it in a group, like I have been speaking about support, there are things that are going to change and mutate, I believe, for the better. And at the same time, we are working with the DNA. There is nothing that's been so specifically working with the DNA when I look at human design or gene keys that I've been in, that I can say in such a tangible way does it. I would recommend that if you want to do this, to do it together with a group is more powerful and more safe than to do it as an evergreen course if it ever comes out later, if we decide to like take the presentation or something and put them somewhere, or it's transcribed. I do believe, like what you were saying, Rob, that it's now that it wants to come through and we don't really know how it's going to be later. And to be able to do it together definitely has its benefits.
Mm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's where, like I was saying, that I'm a 4-1, right, in human designs. My one line was like the lost octave, right? It was me independent, doing the book, writing the transmission. But there was always part of me that really wanted to express and share everything. Like, but it was coming out through the words. And so this time around with the style codons, it was like, actually, this is about expressing this and doing this with people because, as you say, Bella, like, epigenetics is a real thing. Right? So it's not something like, oh, there's lots to speak about. How do we activate our DNA? And can you do it through your thoughts and emotions? And it can seem quite removed. But we actually know this for a fact. So when you start to know and you know exactly where, when, and how, and what it's connected to in your body, and then you decide to activate that by going through it, like this is how epigenetics works. And this is a map of epigenetics. Right? This is switching on genes, dormant genes. This is seeing that there are star codons in places where there wasn't before. Like this is, I say this, it's this is really what the whole point of the Aquarian age is about. That futuristic technology that can be brought into an emotional and physical and tangible thing. And that's the beauty of this, that it has both. It has the expansion as far as you want to go, all the way into that ninth dimension. And it also has this, how it affects how your relationship, that you wake up with your partner, or how you connect to your mother over Thanksgiving. And that's, it's really interesting, Thanksgiving, because in the Lost Octave, I wrote a special thank you to Thanksgiving, because that's when I wrote Gate 71, right? And so it was exactly that time. And so we're starting this course on the 20th, right? The day before Thanksgiving. And I think, again, it's that same potent energy of like, we are moving into this with so much gratitude because this transmission has come and we get to be part of it. And so, yeah, moving together is definitely the way through this for sure.
Okay, a couple more questions. So this is the personal question that somebody was asking when you were telling us about Eve. So she's saying she's in the gene key, so she has 61 as her IQ or her Venus, and she's wondering if this archetype is connected to Sirius or Lemuria.
Well, I mean, yes, essentially, because it's more about new Lemuria. So it's kind of like, because remember I said that the DNA code, I traced Eve all the way back to Africa, right? And so we get to explore more about Africa and where New Lemuria is. So I would say, especially as Eve's revealed this maternal DNA part of this code, because like if you think about the I Ching is like part of this sort of wave of transmission, and then sort of Ra moved into that flow and then added more onto that. And then it sort of like evolved. And so it's sort of like everything's just revealing itself at the right time. And so the fact that Eve is saying, by the way, I've been here since the birth of humanity in the genome, and I'm only just revealing now in 2024 that I'm right here. So that's pretty auspicious. And so that's why I say that it's probably more the fact of connecting her to New Lemuria, because that's what this project's about, is about the promised land of where do we actually find places on the planet are birthing the stick root race, which are activating DNA codes. And that's why I say I've actually outlined parts of the actual planet are in sync with the DNA code, which is just it doesn't get any more physical than that. So yeah, I would say new Lemuria for sure.
Then we have similar questions as yesterday about the tropical and the true. Are the codons located according to tropical astrology? I would love if it's applicable to the true sky.
Yeah. So just that if you think about it, that if you imagine the wheel, right, of 72 gates, or in the I Ching it's 64 gates, right? So that's your wheel. And so it's really different ways of astrology is like how you want to carve those gates into different sections, right? So, like I said, with normal tropical, it's divided into 12 equal 30-degree signs, right? And then in the constellational, that's where you get the different slices of the pie, right? So some of the pie is 40 degrees and some of the pie is 10 degrees. So in a way, it doesn't matter whichever way, whatever system you want to use, it doesn't matter. The gates are what the gates are. The DNA is what the DNA is. How you decide to say, okay, no, 61 is in Aquarius, for example. Maybe you in sidereal, that's what you decide. Well, then that's fine. It doesn't affect what the Dark Codon of Eve is about, because she is what she's saying she is. And whether you decide that it's in, say, Aquarius, or I make that reference to Saturn and the perfection of Saturn, because Saturn's geometry, right? So even if it's not linked to Saturn as an astrological zodiac sign of Capricorn, then Saturn still stands for matter and architecture. So that's what Eve is sort of the defiant one about. It's about creating chaos in the structure of order, right, in order to create balance. And so it's sort of like a flip script. So yeah, whatever you want to use, because there's multiple different ways. The Jyotish, the Vedic systems, all of the different degrees, variations, whatever constellational system you want to use, it doesn't matter. You just apply it to this. You carve up the wheel however you want to carve it up, and it will still tell you the same story. It might be slightly different nuance, like Aquarius is shifted there or whatever. It really doesn't matter, because this is on a sort of a, a micro fractal level and a multidimensional level. It's applicable to everything.
Thank you. I'll read a question and I have a couple of things I want to say about it. My question is around the embodiment and integration aspects. I want to know more about the preparatory aspects embedded in the course, and if we need to allow for a period of preparation before learning about this in-depth material. The question touches upon the concept described earlier about the clearing of the different energy bodies and pathways or nadis before embodying the higher frequencies as those described in the star codon. I know about the embodiment focus of the course and wanted to know more about the period of preparation before diving into the material. Is this preparatory period also the 40-day aspect of the course described? So from my point of view, why I sit here and I feel like I'm in integrity sitting here is that this course, I come from, my initiation is with plant medicine. So I have a long tradition with the Red Road. And as that is using something outside of yourself, a plant spirit or a plant molecule in order to be able to bust through and go deeper and go in and die and come back and all these things, like whatever you feel about it. And I wouldn't say that everybody should do that or that everybody has a biology, a makeup that's good for. What I feel with this material is that it actually works from the inside out. So it works on a cellular level, and the cells are really intelligent. They know what they are ready for. They know when they are ready to upgrade. So for me, this is actually a quite gentle way to work with it, because it's you that is breathing in and filtering and integrating something that you already know, but it's more remembering. I think that is very, very helpful. And we're going to speak about that tomorrow, when you're going to be able to feel into those embodiment practices. But of course, also just in general, I start my mornings with breath work most of the days. I have an energetic hygiene where I have some open centers in human design. So I am aware of that. I'm going to do some shaking and I'm going to do some toning and some things so that I feel like I'm in energetic integrity. And that is important for this work, but it's as important for your life in general. I would not be afraid that I'm not ready. And that's also why today and yesterday, I wanted also to bring it back to the basics. If you come from astrology or human design or wherever you come from, even if this is advanced material, it's not really like you can't come in. I would like anybody to come in and anybody to feel ready. And I would even hope that if you're here today, that the synchronicity of the universe is so that we could actually say that you're ready if you're here. But of course, feel into it, sleep on it, send messages to me or Rob, ask questions if you feel like there is a hesitation. I would not say that there is a 40-day preparatory time. You do have a couple of weeks before we start. There is an early bird pricing for the rest of the week, but take your time. To wait a little longer and pay a little bit more might be better than to just jump on it in your high and then feel like it wasn't right. So that would be my reply to that question. And thank you for that concern or that hesitation. I think it's a very important thing to know before we jump headfirst into anything.
Yeah, beautifully said. And yeah, great question as well. But what's quite, this is why I say about synchronicity, right? This is quite funny because the title, like Eve, Star Code of Eve, the title was the Mother Vine, right? So they all have their titles. The title of the Star Codon of Sovereignty that I showed you today, the title is Born Ready. So this is why I say it's just so magical, because the whole point of this sovereignty is that we delay that often, right? Because it's stepping into yourself, stepping into who you are. And there's this weird sort of sense of like hesitation, this delay. And it's like, in a way, that delay will always be there. And the Star Codon speaks about that you're always going to improve. You're always going to be able to refine more and more. But at some point, the universe calls you out and says, well, you're born ready. You're already it. You just need to know that. You just need to realize that. And so, same with the preparation, is that the whole point of this is that we take you piece by piece, that we take you gate by gate or star codon by star codon. So it starts to layer things in. That's to say, week after week, just build, just like going to the gym or any good habit. You keep going week after week, you get stronger, you get more confident, you start to see how it all, if when you start anything, it's always going to be this sort of sense of, do I need to do anything beforehand? It's like, no, just start running. It's just like, just get your clothes on, go down the gym and just get there. Just even arrive, right? Because that's the first step. And then the second step's like you arrive and then you start to walk or you pick up a weight, whatever it is. That's the whole point of why it takes a year, because if we tried to do this any shorter, then yeah, you'd probably need to be prepared. But as the fact we've got a whole year to play with, it's designed for us to do. It's designed to take us from 3D into the next dimensions. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Colette, I like this question, and there might be more of you that are in this situation. I haven't studied the gene keys or human design. I also don't understand about the DNA, but with capitalized but, when I hear Rob speak, I feel transmissions. And she has seen all of the interviews that you've done and podcasts and all that. And she wonders if that's a good course for her, even though she doesn't come from those more traditional paths.
Amazing. Yeah. And the thing is, what makes this really interesting, because is that the wealth of knowledge that has, right? She's been in the human design system. It's just amazing. When I asked her, like, hey, I found this and this, like, what's your thought on it? And she just comes back with, oh yeah, that's connected to this, this and this. And I'm like, wow, okay. Like, it's so cool to do that, have that reflection, because to me, this is brand new, right? Like I didn't know this. This it's not something that I studied. It's like this came as it came. The lost octave came as it came. I didn't spend 10 years studying the I Ching. It's just in transmission. It gifts you the abilities to move through a process, to start to understand it day by day, and to weave it through. And so that's why I say, like, really, if you're the one that's going to know if you're ready to do this, and like I said, that everybody is born ready and you're never going to necessarily feel ready. It's already just something that's like, okay, let's just go. It's new to me when I was learning this. Like, I didn't just go, oh, yeah, I know exactly how to move the DNA from the third dimension to the ninth dimension. That was a whole process I've been through. And of course, it's a very quick process. That tends to be how I work, right? How it happens, because I think it's about me bringing it in to share with everybody else. But it's if I can do this, if I can learn it, and that's why I say I found the cheat codes to show you how to read a hexagon, how to read the DNA code, how to see that these geometries fit together. Like it's so piece by piece. And my background is sports coaching. So I've spent many, many years coaching children or to adults, but mainly working on coaching kids. And it's trying to take really complicated things that you want them to do and to bring it down into exciting, a way to remember, a way to inspire, a way to empower. And that's really what I feel is like my kind of path, is to take something that's really complicated and to say, like, look, all you need to do is this and see for yourself, see these patterns, see these ways in it all works. And so I would say, if you're brand new to this and you have no idea about anything, that's actually perfect, because you're learning the intricacies of everything stage by stage. And as I say, this is the whole I Ching. It's all of the decans, it's all of the astrology, it's all of the star codons. So you're learning the whole system stage by stage. And that's why I say I hope at the end of the year that we get to this place where everybody is feeling really confident about knowing the entire system and how it all works.
Actually, what you're saying is really tying into the questions that are similar and that have to do with the book. So I see that the new material presented relates to what was covered in the book. I'm interested to learn more about the similarities and differences between what's presented in the course and covered in the book. And then also, there's the question, will the course cover the lost octave while going through the star codons, or is it interconnected? Am I understanding this right? So it's about that what's covered in the book and what's in the course.
So yes, this is like, I call it the Venus transition part two. So it's the next stage of the lost octave, right? That's why it's called the lost octave star codons. So yeah, it's like if you've got the book and you're working your way through that, it's a different transmission. So the lost octave is going into the star stories and getting us to know very much the astrology and then what these new gates were and all of that sort of thing. And then the star codons is a different thing. It weaves together. They're all interlinked, as you saw. The star law of Eve is linked to Delphinus, the dolphin. So we do cover it and touch on it, but we don't focus on just the star law, which is what is in the lost octave, right? This is focusing on the whole of all these things. So yeah, they dovetail perfectly, and they're one precedes the other. So if you're reading the book and you're just making your way through that material and you're doing this, it's going to make even more sense of what the book's saying. You're going to be able to have embodiment practices that connect into the book. And the thing is with a book, it's it's amazing if you're great at self-learning. Whereas this is different. This is, you've got two people here every single week that are helping you understand it and answering questions. And we're going through this together, and other people are going to share stuff that are going to give keys and openings as well. So that's why this is more important in a way, to move it through as a collective. The lost octave you can do by yourself and work through it in your own time. This is this sense of actually moving it through with people and having a support through this. So yeah, they dovetail perfectly. They help each other. When you know more of one, you're going to know more of the other, and it's all going to make this beautiful um, sense, this beautiful harmony. So
Yeah, and this question is partly answered, but Padma is asking, are there pairings like the 41, the 61 for other gates and how to find those? This is partly what we're showing you. The 10 words at the bottom are pairings with pairs of gates. But do you want to say something more about those pairings, Rob?
yeah, I mean, other than that, well, the whole point of like, how do we find out what they are? Well, that's what the course is, right? So that's why we're here, because the course goes into those pairings and reveals them, and we go into them, and it's really important. I said that we take everyone stage by stage, because the left brain analytical, like I said, can go into this gate, this gate, this gate, this gate, and how it's all connected. Right? But you miss the unfolding understanding of it. And that's why I say it's like leaping into the ninth dimension, having no understanding of even the third dimension, and actually doing that physical work. So that's why it's piece by piece that we need to do it. And yeah, there's pairings, there's singles, there's groups, and then it expands. So to say there's like, what are the groupings, it's, well, everything's a group in a different way, in different dimensions. I hope that came across in the diagrams. We can start to see how it multiplies and brings together.
So Julia is saying, this is amazing information, mind blowing. What help is there if someone has difficulty integrating the transmission? That is, the shadow is brought up.
Do you want to answer that, or do you, I can answer it as well, but I'd like to see your take.
I mean, we know that everything exists, the light and the dark, the shadow and the gift. And this is a transmission that there can be some resistance and there can be some quantum leaps. And I believe that we're here for all of it. And this is again going back to what we have said in this Q&A, that doing it together feels like a really good way of doing it. I'm so happy that this is not a book, actually, and that we have embodiment practices. Is there anything more I want to say about that? Yeah, I mean, welcoming whatever comes up. That's the way of Tantra. And that's what we are about, I believe.
Yeah, no, beautifully said. And that's why I say the maternal DNA is a different journey, because you're consciously moving through the sort of the facets of life. And like Bella said, whatever they are, sometimes they can look ugly and messy, and they can be fearful and difficult. And that's the whole point of the mother vine, right? She's breaking through even the difficult parts, and she'll always find a way, right? That she'll always come up with the answers. That's what Mother Earth is about. And so as we move through it, that's why I say that as we go through the transmission, we get to see what is happening. What are we feeling? How is everybody feeling that's moving through it? And we get to share. And then over the week, we then get to brew on it and to experience it more and more. But that's the point of healing and expansion, is about consciously moving into places that you wouldn't normally move into. So that's why you need the support. That's why you need the embodiment practices. And of course, we're doing that tomorrow.
And also knowing that the embodiment practices that we are going to suggest for you, they are not crutches. It's not like, oh, try to take a walk or try to take a bath when you feel not good. These are not crutches to be able to manage a little better. It's exactly what Rob is saying. These are practices to move through it. So that's also the difference sometimes when we try to just make something feel a little better, and then really we have something that allows us to actually move through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jess is asking, what is it that links Eve to AUA? I think you had it on the slide. Remember, we were speaking about the geometry and how it was interesting, how it looked. So maybe you want to say something about that again.
Yes, other than that, so that's part of this, is like I say, the DNA is linked to the DNA code, like the AUA, that is linked through the hexagrams. So the way in which the hexagrams are laid out in the I Ching. And so that's all the thing that we'll cover on how to read that DNA code, how to read the hexagram, and why is those letters. I think perhaps what you're asking is, why did I think it was linked to Eve in that mirroring? It's just like an observance, right? So as I'm going through how numbers and words and letters and all these things combine, there's like a direct reflection there of the fact that there's the same letter, two E's, two A's. And so when you start to see like patterns like this, like in something that's kind of like you could say a mythology about a woman in the Bible, right? Is sort of like taking that archetype and then that mirrors actual genetic scientific code in its letters and construction. That's when you start to see. So they're the threads. Like for me, when I see those patterns, that's a doorway. Like that's like, oh yeah, I found. I don't even know what I found, but I found something amazing. That's when you just like go straight into that door, and you're like, there is going to be something amazing at the end of that, and that's exactly what happened, right? You could say the whole star codons was birthed because of that connection. When I saw that and I knew that was Eve, first woman, and I saw that DNA code, I was like, I'm going to open this door. I can feel the golden thread is just going to unravel something. And that's what became this whole universe, as what Bella said.
Yeah. Do the codons correlate to sound frequencies?
Yeah, there's a whole section on music. I can speak about that tomorrow. Mm, Obviously, as with the lost octave, all of the gates I laid out were connected to not just musical notes, but frequencies. And that's the music and sound and language. We'll get into that tomorrow. That's a huge part of the embodiment practices. So, yes, 100% all linked to music, all linked to frequencies. I've actually choreographed and written down all of the frequencies, all of the musical tones, like how it's all laid out. It's just like amazing. But there's, I say that this transmission, it's a gift that keeps on giving. Right? There's so much, and obviously we've only got we're already gone about an hour and a half today as well. So there's so much in here to to share, and so we're trying to do it piece by piece. But yes, all of that is in there, whatever facet of life. That's what I say. It's the genetic answers to our universe. So if it's music you want to know, it's in there. If it's geometry you want to know, it's in there. If it's emotional connections you want to know, it's in there. If it's astrological, it's in there. That every single answer you could ever wish for is in there. It's only a case of going through the door and then having that as your intention and then revealing it all. And that's what I'm here for. I love geeking out and finding out all those bits. So yeah, you're as this probably develops over the year, I'll probably be finding even more golden nuggets and secret parts that weren't shown to me this time because I haven't gone through fully certain doors. Right? So only when I go through a certain door will I can say like, "Hey guys, like I went through this week, and like I found that this was connected there, and I never even saw that at the beginning." And that's the beauty of it being something living, and it will continue to be that. So that years later, after we've done this journey, like snippets of information will come out, and how things will evolve. Yeah, it's an exciting chance to be, as I say, on the very forefront of all of this.
Many questions was about this. So if you have seen on the website, on the very bottom, it does speak about becoming an emissary. So we'll speak a bit more about that tomorrow. And then there were questions about the investment. So you do have the investment here. This is the early bird price. This is until the end of the week. You can, of course, do it per month instead. So that's then it's a little bit easier and it's going to go up around $400, I believe, next week. So you have a little bit more time to think about it. You can fit into if you want to split it up or if you want to do it in one payment. But of course, if you're already thinking about the emissary thing, it seems like you're with us on the journey. So yeah, sleep on it. Today, I feel like you have a little bit more tangibly starting to see the pairing, starting to see those 10 star codons that were together. So the whole geometry of the star code of independence that they live in. See this that one also where it comes from in the 3D with those two that come together, the cubes, right? Like today, I feel like I can sigh out because I feel like we've shown you so much more to be able to feel into more what this is about, both in a more tangible sense, but also a bit of a felt sense with the story of Adam and Eve, basically. So hopefully today you have a little bit more, like we say in Sweden, flesh on the bones to be able to know what's your next step.
Yeah, so good. So thank you for that, Bella. And yeah, thank you for all of the questions. And like I said, that's why we did it in a three-part series because so much to cover. And we'll do the emissary stuff and we'll do the embodiment practice tomorrow. So again, there's so much amazing things in that. I look forward to sharing with you tomorrow all about that. And yeah, great to share this space with you. Thank you, Ben. Been amazing as always. And yeah, thank you, everybody. And I'll see you tomorrow.